And here we go again. I'm back home and doing the whole YouTube thing. Who would have thought I actually did that? Anyway, 2 videos in a short time span. Should consider it my Independence Day gift. Well, probably by the time I'm releasing it, it's probably going to be like the 6th or 7th. But just keep in mind, I had America in mind. Now, I was going to make this an off-the-cuff video. And to be honest, it could be considered to be that kind of video. But since I've been working and keeping track of these topics, despite the lack of decent internet for the last few days, I've been keeping track of these topics for so long, we have a lot to cover. So this may be a far longer video than I'd consider an off-the-cuff to normally be. And with that being said, and moving onward into uncharted territory, let's just call this a wrap-up of the news in the political sphere for the last 2 weeks or so. So, for the lack of a better term, let's just call this a hiatus hangover.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Let's just call that a working title, shall we? Anyway, as we travel on down the path of infinite insanity that has been the masquerade of politics in the recent days and, let's be honest, recent years, keep in mind everyone is wearing masks. Okay, that terrible pun aside, keep in mind these aren't necessarily in chronological order, nor are they presented in ranking of importance, in my opinion. This is simply how my notes turned out as I was writing them down on a piece of paper, left without access to my computer for the last few days. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? For those who missed the Democratic debates and were unaware of the representative from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard, which, by the way, I just found out was the proper way to pronounce her name, not Gubbard, which I have been pronouncing it, but that's besides the point. Anyway, she has thrown her hat in for the Democratic nomination, and during the debates, she brought up Iran and our previous dealings with Iraq as well. And below, and when I say Iraq, that includes the Middle East in whole. Let's be fair here that we got ourselves tossed in a whole fucking mess of worms, but that is what it is. And below, you'll find a link to a video that is a compilation of all the things she said during the debate. Now, I'm not here to tear down her atypical modern progressive rhetoric, nor am I going to support her or not support her. However, what I am going to gesture to, in a manner of speaking, is how some members of the media have treated her generally anti-war stance. Namely, Vox. Oi, this guy. Oh, but wait. BuzzFeed just decided to chime in.
Dear God, it's like idiots instead.
But anyway, Vox and their infinite levels of vivacious villainy and straight-up misleading BS didn't end there. There's, of course, this gem. Candidate that doesn't want to bomb the Middle East to hell under false premise of bringing peace to the region. Blasphemer! Look, Americans are sick of war. We all are. Right, left, middle. For the most part, we are tired of the never-ending bullshit that's sold to us by figureheads placed on a fucking suit. However, the vitriol and outright slanderous claims made against Tulsi and even Yang to an extent from people who claim to be progressive is an open door into the cancerous ideology of neoliberalism and progressivism. Instead, we had the party of peace baffled by the idea of an anti-war candidate. And no, I don't mean Bernie's every now and again appeal to reasoning he did while he was running, strewn between Marxist speeches and economic illiteracy. This is why Tulsi irritates the neolibs so much. She's actually appealing to those of other political persuasions outside of the overly progressive Dems can do no wrong, therefore it's okay when they bomb hospitals crowd. She's appeared on Fox and spoke with Tucker Carlson, where not only did Carlson state that she had been, and I quote, savaged and smeared by the left. But they were also joined by a liberal journalist, a progressive journalist, if you will, by the name of Glenn Greenwald, who stated, and I quote, "They hate her because she's questioning a lot of Washington orthodoxy that both political parties support, including why it is that we continue to try to change the regimes of countries far away, like in Syria, and why we continue to prop up regimes that make the world hate us, like in Saudi Arabia." Now, history lessons aside, and despite that the mainstream media and reactionaries would have you believe, your average American, hell, I'd say your average human being, doesn't like war. And if the modern liberals want to claim anti-intervention is a conservative policy, well, that just goes to show that ever-waning lines between the supposedly opposed sides, while they stand in solidarity hand in hand in the name of foreign wars, whether it be for the greater good, as the left claims, or in the name of freedom, as the right claims. But moving on to a different topic, but still quite similar topic. Let's talk about how the DNC seems to be treating the two outliers of the Democratic run, those two being, of course, Yang and Tulsi, as I've mentioned before. Despite Eric Newcomb Swalwell, O'Rourke's seemingly unprovoked use of Spanish, Booker's talk of reparations, sends the father passed to the son much, and Harris's hypocritical speech regarding the very evidently screwed up justice system, there seems to be an almost intentional fascination with these two candidates, from Tulsi claiming that there was a clear bias about the amount of time she was given to speak in comparison to others, or Yang claiming that his microphone was at times turned off entirely. NBC denies the claim, but at this point it's a he said, she said scenario, and there's no way of telling. But I do find it odd that the news organizations to which these accusations have been levied would have a title such as this to immediately cite to as a way to recant anyone who might state otherwise. But I suppose this is just a more of the same shit we saw as a follow-up to the 2016 election, and I'm sure there's going to be more half-thought-out, mentally stunted attempts by the overly engorged mainstream media to cast a shadow on any positive light shown to these two candidates. And let's be frank here, we all kind of saw this coming. And also, let me say it right here, they're going to favor Biden and Harris, of course. That's just my opinion. And I can't base that off of anything besides my opinion, and after all, I can't tell the future. But with those two major features out of the way, so to speak, let's move on to number 3. And this is verging on the more recent news, but for those unaware, a journalist by the name of Andy, I don't want to fuck up his last name, so I'm not even going to try. But anyway, this man recently came under the attack of the ironically named Antifa, or quote-unquote anti-fascists.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Which, I'm not even going to dip my toe into that irony soup. Anyway, while filming in Portland, a group of primitive screwheads decided to beat this man, and well, as you'd expect, he got hurt, which would seem to be a pretty cut and dry case, you know, don't act violence upon others kind of business. But no, there had to be people on Twitter who came to either the defense of or apologizing for the actions of these absolute turkey vultures. Now, I'll play the devil's advocate for those who will claim that he is a grifter. Maybe he is. But the video of him being attacked isn't faked. Neither is this one. I don't care what your political leanings are. This is unacceptable. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter their justification outside of self-defense. This is unacceptable. But there's more to this, of course. After all, Antifa, despite all their claims of fighting fascism, a sentence in of itself being designed for ridicule and parody, act like fascists. But there's always this kind of asshole. Look, you can apply numbers to it, which, let's be honest here, there's massive amounts of room for debate in regards to those numbers. Violence is still violence, and in no way abdicates these vile scum acting the way that they do. Eye for an eye, and we all go blind. Lest we forget the teachings of old, we end up repeating history. Are these philosophical statements going over the average Antifa member's heads? Yeah, probably. Regardless, though, even if you were right about that 50 number, let's run under the assumption that you are, hypothetically. Give it time, and the overly exuberant vacuum for a skull sheeple who consider anyone who falls outside of their suburbanite, parent-funded political ideology a literal Nazi, and therefore deserving of violence, will take it too fucking far. After all, given the previous video, they've upgraded to crowbars. So I beg of you, those of you still sane on the left and on the right, don't let the extremists get their way, because they're making both of your sides appear as though that's the norm, not the exception. Treat them as though they are the exception and not the rule. Call them out when they do the things that they do that are wrong. Violence is wrong, regardless of the people committing it, regardless of the names that they apply to themselves. Outside of self-defense, violence is wrong. Anyway, rant over. Let's move on. I didn't intend for this, but it's another highlight upon the ever-encroaching authoritarian behavior of certain Democratic members. In this case, Frederica Wilson. I'm assuming I'm getting that right, but if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. She recently said some pretty anti-free speech rhetoric, quoting, she said, "These people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace, and there is no need for anyone to think that is unacceptable." And, even more damningly so, she continued to say, we're going to shut them down and work with whoever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted. And you cannot intimidate members of Congress, frighten members of Congress. It is against the law, and it's a shame in this United States of America. Well, first off, I'm online, and per the First Amendment, I'm going to tell you that I quite frankly don't give two shits if you feel intimidated by what I can criticize you for, you authoritarian piece of trash. Secondly, you and every other member of government is not a protected class. You are free to be criticized, online or otherwise, and this goes for you and everybody else. And you should be, because you're a power-grabbing crybaby. Also, I'd like to take a moment here to point out the left's constant pushing of the goalposts of things like intimidation, violence, and hatred. Just because I criticize you and your legitimately garbage opinions doesn't mean I want to hurt you. Quite the contrary. However, the fact you want to prosecute people for speech which is entirely against the First Amendment by the oath you took to be in office, you are committing treason. And that, my dear Congresswoman, is in fact against the law. Not that fake law that you made up in your own head to protect your constituents from criticism. This is indeed, and those things that you are advocating for are indeed a violation and treasonous by nature. Be careful upon the nails you tread. Anyway, I have one more topic to cover. And this one is going to be covered rather quickly in comparison to the others, as I'm growing tired, admittedly, and I'm sure you are growing tired of hearing my voice. But nevertheless, this needs to be covered. Trump meeting Kim Jong-un in the demilitarized zone, or DMZ, if you prefer to call it that, and being the first sitting president to do so, which, quite frankly, is quite an achievement. But for fuck's sake, why do I still have to say this? I'm not a Trump fan in the slightest. I feel like I have to expose that information. I have to espouse that information, otherwise it's going to be assumed that I am a Trump fan for actually defending something that he does. Does that shed light on our current political climate? I think it does. But anyway, Trump doing this is a massive step in diplomacy, and as such, one would imagine this would be something that both sides of the aisle could lean across and agree upon. But you'd be wrong. This is why I don't ascribe myself to the left or the right. You're too busy at each other's throats to see the good and the bad in yourselves and your opponents. Whether you agree with a man or not, if you are anti-war by any level of measurable sanity, you should be able to view this in a positive light. But no, we've got a snake eating its own tail trying to defeat the other side in owned counts while sacrificing principles in the name of the almighty letter. I'd much rather have a president who deals with another leader man to man, rather than lean on an arguably corrupt organization of other governments to levy that other man into an agreement that will fall through, inevitably always has. For fuck's sake, even if Trump gets this man to sign an agreement, he'll probably violate it more than progressives violate the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments. How about we stop standing on these platitudes constructed of nothing more than the papier-mâché of an outdated economy and actually start supporting fucking principles, regardless of what side of the political spectrum said principles happen to be coming from. That should not be a controversial statement, but it is. That's the fucking sickening part, and that is the entirety of this video put into a fucking picture frame and hung on the wall for both the left and the right to look upon with disdain, because neither one of them is capable of looking themselves in the mirror and admitting when their own side has fucked up. Rather, they point the finger across the aisle and say, well, they did it first. Well, here's a newsflash for you, dipshit. That doesn't excuse your fucking behaviors. Anyway, this video is running on, well, Jesus fucking Christ, it's been 17 minutes now. Anyway, that just about does it for this video. I'm not too sure when I'll be back with the other one, but needless to say, I should be back next weekend. Hopefully. Once again, hopefully. Life has an odd way of dealing strange hands. But regardless, if you like the video, give it a like. If you find this video interesting and thought-provoking, give me a follow, even if you don't agree. I'm always willing to listen to criticism. I'm always willing for an open debate. Excuse me. And to the rest of you subscribers out there, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and or night. And I'll see you cunts in the next one.